I taught my daughter self-defense when she was a little girl. 7 days after her wedding, I watched my son-in-law slap her in front of 30 guests after she exposed his hidden financial lies. I stayed silent and watched her stand up using everything I had taught her. Seconds later, he was injured and his family blamed my daughter. They called me a useless old man, but they didn't know the quiet father they mocked had spent decades preparing people for dangerous moments until I finally stepped forward. If you're still here with me, thank you. That means everything to Revenge Dad. Before we go any further, drop a comment and tell me, where are you watching from? Your city, your state, your country. I want to know who's in this with me. Some story details have been shaped for storytelling and educational purposes. Names and places are coincidental, but everything I'm sharing with you carries a message worth hearing. The night I finally understood everything about the past year of my life, I was sitting alone in my living room in Pasadena, with a cup of coffee that had gone cold 40 minutes earlier, and the local news playing on the television across the room. I wasn't really watching it. I hadn't been watching it for most of the evening. I'd been sitting in the same chair I've owned for 11 years, the one with the armrest that Emily keeps threatening to re-upholster. And I'd been turning things over in my mind the way you do, when something enormous has finally finished happening, and you're not quite sure yet what to do with the quiet it leaves behind. Then the anchor said the name, Jason Mercer. I looked up at the screen. There he was, a photograph first, the kind pulled from a company website, the professional smile and the open collar and the expression of a man who had decided that confidence was something you performed rather than something you earned. Then the footage. Security camera footage from Los Angeles International Airport, grainy and overlit the way airport cameras always are, showing a man in a gray jacket being walked through a crowded terminal with his hands behind his back and 2 federal agents at his sides. He still had the carry-on bag over one shoulder. One of the agents reached over and took it from him, and Jason Mercer did not resist, and the crowd parted around them the way crowds do when they sense something has gone irreversibly wrong for someone nearby. I picked up the remote and turned the television off. The room went quiet. Outside, someone 2 houses down was running a sprinkler, even though it was past 9 at night and I could hear the faint rhythmic sweep of it through the window I'd left cracked open. Pasadena in late autumn smells like dry grass and eucalyptus, and I'd lived here long enough that the smell didn't register anymore until a night like that, one when everything registered. I set the remote down on the side table next to the cold coffee. I looked at my hands for a moment. The knuckles, the old scar across the back of my right hand, from something that happened a long time ago, in a context I've never fully explained to anyone, including Emily. Then I leaned back in the chair and I started thinking about where this story actually begins. My name is Richard Whitmore. I am 60 years old. I live alone in a house on a quiet street in Pasadena, California. And if you ask my neighbors to describe me, they would probably use words like quiet and private and keeps to himself, which are all accurate and none of which would tell you anything that actually matters about who I am. What they know about me is this: I've lived here for 11 years. I keep the front yard clean. I wave when I'm getting the mail. I've had maybe 4 conversations longer than 10 minutes with anyone on this block, and all 4 of those were about either the weather or a neighborhood coyote situation that got briefly out of hand in the spring of 2022. What they don't know is everything else. I spent the better part of 2 decades working in training and instruction, specifically the kind of training that doesn't come with a clear job title or a business card you hand out at dinner parties. I taught people how to handle situations where the margin for error was small and the consequences of getting it wrong were immediate. I taught them how to move through a space without announcing themselves, how to read the room before they walked into it, how to fall without breaking, how to stay composed when composure was the only thing standing between them and something they couldn't take back. I was good at it, and when I decided I was done with it, I walked away cleanly, and I chose this house in this neighborhood, and I let the whole thing settle into the past where it belonged. I don't tell people any of that. Not because I'm ashamed of it, I'm not, but because it stopped being relevant. A person is allowed to stop being what they used to be. That's not deception. That's just time. The only thing that didn't change when I stepped away from that life was Emily. She was 10 years old when her mother died. Pancreatic cancer diagnosed in February, gone by September. The kind of timeline that doesn't give you enough space to fully believe it's happening until it's already over. I remember standing in the hospital parking lot at 7 in the morning, the day after looking at my car, and thinking I have to go home and tell my daughter. I have to go home and figure out how to be both of her parents now. I have to figure out how to do all of this at the same time starting today. Emily is 28 now. She works as an accountant at a financial services firm in downtown Los Angeles, which means she commutes 45 minutes each way on a good day and longer on every other kind of day, and she has never once complained about it to me, not in the 2 years she's had that job. She got that from her mother, the refusal to spend energy resenting things that simply are what they are. She got other things from me. I was thinking about all of this sitting in the quiet of my living room, with the sprinkler going outside and the television off when my phone buzzed on the side table. A text message from Emily. 4 words. Did you see it? My chest tightened, not with pain, but with the particular feeling of a chapter closing. I pressed my thumb against the screen and typed back, I saw it. Then I set the phone face down and looked at the ceiling for a while. The first time I met Jason Mercer, he shook my hand and smiled and asked me 3 questions in the first 6 minutes of dinner. 2 of them were about Emily, which was what you'd expect. The third one was not. The third one was about what I planned to leave her when I was gone. The restaurant Jason chose was an Italian place on Colorado Boulevard, the kind with cloth napkins and a wine list printed on heavy cardstock, and servers who introduced themselves by name. He'd made the reservation. He'd chosen the table corner booth, good sight lines away from the kitchen noise. He'd already ordered a bottle of Barolo before Emily and I arrived, which meant he'd been there at least 15 minutes early. I noticed all of that before I sat down. Emily's face when she saw him waiting, that's what I remember most about walking in. Her whole expression opened up the way a person's face opens when they see someone they're not yet used to being allowed to love. Her cheeks flushed, and she reached for his hand across the table before she'd even fully settled into her seat, and Jason squeezed her fingers and looked at her with the particular warmth of a man who knew exactly how he looked when he did that. Mr. Whitmore. He stood and extended his hand to me. Firm grip, the right amount of pressure, eye contact, held for exactly the right duration. I've been looking forward to this. Richard is fine, I said, and I sat down. He was good. I want to be honest about that because the easier version of this story is to say I saw through him immediately, that something in his eyes gave him away from the first moment. But that's not what happened. What happened is that he was genuinely good at this, at being present, at asking questions that made the person across from him feel considered, at laughing at the right moments and letting silences breathe without rushing to fill them. Over the course of 2 hours, he asked Emily about her work, her friends, a hiking trip she'd mentioned, wanting to take to Zion National Park. He asked me about the neighborhood, about Pasadena, about how long I'd lived there. He was attentive. He was charming. He was by every visible measure exactly what a father would hope his daughter had found. And then somewhere between the main course and dessert, he asked me the third question. He framed it carefully. He said something about wanting to understand Emily's full picture, about how seriously he took building a future together, about how in his line of work, investment management portfolio strategy, he'd seen too many families caught off guard by estate planning they'd never gotten around to. He said he hoped I didn't mind him asking. What does your long-term plan look like? He said. For Emily's financial future, I mean, after you're gone. Emily's hand moved to her wine glass. She turned the stem slowly between her fingers, and I could see a faint crease form between her eyebrows. Not alarm, just a small register of something unexpected. I looked at Jason Mercer across the table, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not anger, something quieter than anger and more precise. The way your body temperature drops by half a degree when a situation shifts from routine to something that requires your full attention. I think Emily's going to be just fine, I said. She's always figured things out on her own. Jason smiled and pivoted smoothly to a story about a client whose retirement planning had transformed his daughter's life, and the conversation moved on, and Emily laughed at something he said, and I ate my dinner and said the right things at the right times, and drove home afterward with my hands at 10 and 2, and my mind working through what had just happened. The way I used to work through things when working through things quickly was something I got paid to do. I got home at 9:47. I know the exact time because I looked at the clock on the microwave when I walked through the kitchen, a habit I've never fully shaken. I went to my desk in the small room off the hallway that I use as an office, mostly bookshelves, and a lamp and a laptop that's 3 years old, and I opened the contacts on my phone and scrolled until I found the name Marcus Webb. Marcus and I had worked together years ago in circumstances that don't need to be detailed here. What matters is that he'd been a careful man then, and he was a careful man now. The kind of careful that comes from spending decades in situations where the wrong move cost more than you wanted to pay. He'd built a solid practice in Los Angeles corporate and private law, the kind of clients who came to him when a problem needed to be solved without becoming a story anyone told later. It was almost 10 o'clock. I called anyway. He picked up on the second ring. "Richard." His voice was the same as it had always been, measured unhurried, the voice of someone who had decided a long time ago that rushing to speak was a form of weakness. "It's been a while?" "It has," I said. "I need you to look into someone for me." Quietly. A pause, not hesitation. Marcus didn't hesitate. He was simply the kind of man who let information settle before he responded to it. "Who?" he said. "His name is Jason Mercer," I said. "He runs something called Mercer Capital Group, Beverly Hills address. He's been seeing my daughter for about 6 months, and he asked me tonight what I planned to leave her when I died." Another pause. Longer this time. "What kind of looking into?" Marcus asked. "The kind where you tell me if I'm being overprotective," I said, "or the kind where you tell me I'm not?" Marcus exhaled through his nose, a sound I recognized as the sound he made when he was already running through what the job would require. "Give me 2 weeks," he said. He called back in 4 days. His voice when I picked up was not the voice of someone calling to tell me I was being overprotective. It was flat and careful in a specific way, the way a person's voice goes flat when they're controlling what they let through. He said only 5 words before I could respond. "We need to meet in person." My throat tightened around something I didn't have a name for, yet something halfway between dread and the grim specific relief of a man who had suspected something bad and was about to be told he wasn't wrong. The night before I met Marcus, I couldn't sleep. That wasn't unusual for me. I've never been a deep sleeper, not since the years when sleeping deeply in certain situations was the kind of mistake you only made once. But that particular night, I wasn't awake because of old habits. I was awake because every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing Emily's face at that restaurant table, the way her fingers had moved to her wine glass when Jason asked me about my estate plans. The small crease between her eyebrows that she'd inherited from her mother, and that meant in both of them that something had registered as wrong, even if she hadn't decided yet what to call it. I got up at 2 in the morning and went to the kitchen and made coffee I didn't need, and stood at the counter drinking it, and I thought about a Saturday afternoon in the summer of 2008, when Emily was 12 years old and furious with me for the first time about something that actually mattered. We were in the backyard. The old backyard, the house we lived in before I sold it and moved to the current place, bigger yard. Peach tree in the corner that never produced enough peaches to justify itself, but that Emily loved anyway. She was standing about 10 feet away from me, with her arms crossed and her jaw set in the particular way that meant she had already decided she was right and was waiting for me to figure that out. "This is embarrassing," she said. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, the way 12-year-old voices do when the emotion behind them is bigger than expected. "None of my friends have to do this. None of your friends' fathers taught them," I said. "Because it's weird, Dad." She pressed the heel of her hand against her eye, not crying, just pushing back the threat of it, which she'd always done, even as a small child. "You're teaching me, like I'm going to get into a fight. I'm 12. I'm not going to get into a fight." I walked over to the old wooden picnic table and sat down on the bench, which put me at her eye level, which was deliberate. I'd learned a long time ago that conversations with Emily went better when we were at the same height. "Come here," I said. She stomped over and sat across from me with her arms still crossed, chin-up eyes red at the corners. "I'm not teaching you to fight," I said. "I'm teaching you to think. There's a difference. It doesn't feel different." "I know." I leaned forward and put my elbows on the table. "Your mom used to say I worried too much. You know that." That landed. Emily's arms loosened slightly and her jaw softened, and she looked at the table instead of at me. Her mother had been gone 2 years by then, and we were still in the part of grief where her name in a sentence could change the temperature of a room. "She said that?" Emily asked. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "All the time." My chest ached saying it, a clean, specific ache, the kind that never fully goes away, only becomes something you carry rather than something that stops you. "She said I saw problems around every corner, and she was right a lot of the time." I paused. "But not always?" Emily looked up at me. Her eyes were bright and damp, and searching the way a child's eyes get when they're trying to figure out if the adult across from them is telling the whole truth. "Then why?" she asked. "Why do I need to know all this?" I took a breath. I thought about the real answer, the one that lived underneath the easier answers, the one I'd been turning over for 2 years, since I'd stood in that hospital parking lot, trying to figure out how to walk back into a life that had just changed its shape entirely. Because I won't always be there, I said, and I need to know that you'll be okay when I'm not. Not just okay, actually okay. Emily stared at me for a long moment. Then she unfolded her arms and planted both hands flat on the picnic table and said with the directness that she'd had since she was 4 years old, "That's a terrible reason, Dad." "I know," I said. "It's the true one." She made a sound that was halfway between a laugh and a sob and pressed both hands over her face, and her shoulders shook once hard, and then she pulled her hands down and looked at me with wet eyes and said, "Fine. Show me the thing with the wrist again. You're doing it wrong." I laughed so hard my eyes watered. Emily rolled her eyes at me, but she was smiling, and we spent another 40 minutes in that backyard until the light went orange and the neighbor's dog started barking, and Emily said she was hungry and went inside, and I stood there by the peach tree for a while after she left and thought about how she was going to be okay. I didn't know how I knew that. I just knew. Standing in my kitchen at 2 in the morning, 16 years later, I set down the coffee cup and looked at the backyard through the window. Different yard, different house, same dark quiet. Emily was 28 years old and sleeping in her own apartment in Los Angeles, and had no idea that her father had called in a favor from an old colleague 4 days ago, because something about the man she loved had made the temperature drop. She'd told me the last time I'd brought up any hesitation about Jason that I worried too much. She'd sounded exactly like her mother when she said it. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Marcus. "Office 7 a.m., use the side entrance." Side entrance meant he didn't want me seen going in through the lobby. My stomach tightened into a hard knot, and I put the coffee cup in the sink and I went back to bed, and I lay there with my eyes open until 5:30 when I gave up and got dressed in the dark. The ceremony was on a Saturday in December. 45 guests, a rented event space in Malibu with the Pacific Ocean, visible through the west-facing windows. The sky that afternoon was the particular pale blue that Southern California produces in winter, clear and cold and very far away. Emily wore her mother's earrings, small pearl drops, the ones her mother had worn on our own wedding day 29 years earlier. I had given them to Emily the morning of the ceremony, standing in the doorway of the bridal suite, while she sat at the mirror, and when she put them on and looked at her own reflection, her chin trembled so hard she had to press her lips together and breathe through her nose for a full 10 seconds before she trusted herself to speak. "She would have been here," Emily said. Her voice broke cleanly on the last word. "She is here," I said, and I meant it more than I'd meant most things I'd said in a long time. Emily turned from the mirror and wrapped both arms around me, her face pressed against my shoulder, and I felt her shoulders shake twice before she pulled herself back together with the particular discipline she'd had since she was a child. She pulled back, pressed her fingers carefully under both eyes to catch what had escaped, and said, "Don't let me cry during the ceremony. I'll never forgive you if you let me cry during the ceremony." "I'll do my best," I said. She cried twice during the ceremony. I didn't say anything about it because I had made a promise, and keeping it was entirely beyond me, and I suspected she had known that when she asked. Jason cried once during his vows. He held Emily's hands and looked at her, and his voice dropped to something quiet, and his eyes filled and one tear tracked down his left cheek, and half the room exhaled at once. He was very good at it. I want to say that clearly because the easier version of this story is to say I felt nothing watching him, that whatever I had learned from Marcus 6 weeks earlier had made me immune to the performance. But that's not true. He was convincing in the specific way that people are convincing when they have spent years practicing an emotion until it arrives on cue, and even knowing what was underneath it, I felt the smallest unwilling pull of doubt. What if Marcus's folder was incomplete? What if a man could be two things at once, and the thing he was in that moment, holding my daughter's hands, voice gone quiet, was real? Then he glanced at the door, just once, a flicker of the eyes toward the exit while Emily's maid of honor was still reading the passage Emily had chosen. It lasted less than a second. Emily didn't see it. Nobody in that room saw it. I saw it. I put the doubt away and didn't pick it up again. Linda Mercer found me during the reception between the first and second courses. She was a tall woman, impeccably dressed with the posture of someone who had decided a long time ago that how she held herself was a form of communication. She appeared at my elbow the way people appear when they have been watching from across a room and have finally decided to cross it. She looked at my jacket, a navy blazer I had owned for 6 years, well fitted, perfectly appropriate for the occasion, and something moved through her expression that she didn't bother to conceal. "Richard," she said, extending her hand, "we finally meet properly." "Linda," I said, and shook it. "Jason speaks so highly of you." She smiled with her mouth. "It's wonderful that Emily has such a devoted father. She's a lucky girl." I looked at Linda Mercer and thought about the folder sitting in Marcus's locked conference room on South Grand Avenue, and about Dorothy Finch in Arcadia, who was 74 years old and had handed over $180,000 to the man now standing at the front of this room crying on cue. I thought about the fact that Linda was smiling at me with her mouth and watching me with something else entirely behind her eyes. "She makes it easy," I said. Linda held the smile for another moment, then turned toward the room as though something across the space had caught her attention and drifted away without another word. I watched her go, and I thought, she knows something is wrong with her son. She has always known. She just doesn't know what I know about it, and she doesn't know that I know it. That's the only reason she's smiling. I spent the rest of the reception near the windows. I watched Jason work the room, laughing, refilling glasses, leaning in close when someone spoke to him, as if their words were the most important thing he'd heard all evening. I watched Emily move beside him, her hand in his, her smile reaching her cheekbones but stopping there. I watched, and I said nothing because there was nothing yet to say that would have helped her. The folder wasn't ready. The case wasn't built. Saying anything now would only warn Jason that someone was looking, and a man like Jason warned would become a man who had time to move things. So I stood by the windows and I waited, and it was the hardest thing I had done in a long time. Later, near the end of the evening, Emily found me. The sun had gone down over the Pacific and the water had turned dark, and the string lights strung across the ceiling made everything look warmer than it was. She slipped her arm through mine and leaned her head against my shoulder and let out a long, slow breath. The breath of someone setting something heavy down, at least for a moment. "I'm happy, Dad," she said. "I really genuinely am." My throat tightened until it hurt. I put my arm around her and held her against my side, and looked out at the dark water and said, "I know you are, sweetheart." I pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "I know." I held her there for a while, looking at the ocean, and I did not say what I was thinking. What I was thinking was, I hope this is the last time you are this happy before you know what I know. I hope the weeks between now and when you find out are the kindest weeks he gives you. I hope what Marcus finds when he finishes building the paper trail is enough to end this quickly and cleanly. I hope she forgives me for letting her stand in this room tonight and not saying a word. She pulled back eventually, kissed my cheek, and went back to her husband. I watched her cross the room toward him. He saw her coming and opened his arm to receive her and pulled her close and said something into her hair that made her laugh. He was very good at it right up until the end. That night, driving home alone on the Pacific Coast Highway, with the ocean on my left and the hills on my right, my phone lit up on the passenger seat. An email from Marcus sent at 11:14 p.m. 3 words: "Found the Delaware connection." I pulled off at the next turnout and sat with the engine running and the dark water 20 feet below me and read those 3 words 4 times. Then I put the phone face down on the seat and sat in the dark for a while, listening to the sound of the ocean I couldn't quite see. Then I pulled back onto the highway and drove home without the radio on. I need to go back 6 weeks before the wedding to tell you what I already knew when I stood in that Malibu event space and watched my daughter walk down the aisle. Marcus Webb's office was on the 14th floor of a building on South Grand Avenue in downtown Los Angeles, 12 minutes from the courthouse and deliberately unremarkable from the outside, the kind of address that didn't announce itself. I'd been there twice before years ago, in circumstances that had nothing to do with Emily or Jason Mercer or any of this. I knew the layout. I knew which elevator bank was faster. I knew that Marcus kept his real conversations for the small conference room at the back, away from the glass-walled main office where his associates worked. He was waiting for me in that back room when I arrived at 7 in the morning. The door was already closed. A folder sat on the table between us, thick enough to matter, thin enough to be devastating. Marcus didn't offer coffee. That told me something. "Sit down, Richard," he said. I sat. He opened the folder without preamble and turned it so I could read the first page. I looked at it. Then I looked at him. "How solid is this?" I asked. "Solid enough that I almost called you last night," he said. I didn't because I needed to verify one more thing. I verified it this morning at 6:15. He tapped the page with 2 fingers. Mercer Capital Group does not hold a valid investment advisor registration with the California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation. Under California Corporations Code, Section 25401, soliciting investments without proper licensure is securities fraud. What Jason Mercer has been doing, collecting funds from private investors under the representation of active portfolio management, is textbook Ponzi structure. Money from newer investors is being used to pay returns to earlier ones. There is no underlying investment activity generating those returns. The words landed in the room and stayed there. How many people? I asked. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Marcus flipped to the 3rd page and turned it toward me. A list of names, 47 of them, organized by date of initial investment and amount contributed. Most of the names had ages listed beside them: 68, 71, 64, 79. My eyes stopped on one line near the middle of the page. Dorothy Finch, age 74, Arcadia, California. Initial investment, $180,000. I stared at that line for longer than I meant to. $180,000. For a 74-year-old woman in Arcadia, that wasn't an investment. That was everything. That was 30 years of careful living distilled into a single number on a page. Richard, Marcus's voice pulled me back. There's more. He walked me through the rest of it, the shell company registered in Delaware, that existed solely to receive and redistribute funds, the absence of any audited financial statements provided to investors, the personal expenditures that ran directly through business accounts. Restaurants, a lease on a car that cost more per month than most people's mortgage payments, a weekend trip to Scottsdale that had been billed as a client retreat and attended by no clients. When he finished, I put both hands flat on the table and looked at them for a moment. Why haven't you taken this to the SEC already? I asked. Because what I have right now is sufficient to file a referral, but not sufficient to guarantee they'll act quickly, Marcus said. I need 3 more weeks to build out the paper trail on the Delaware entity. If we go too early and the investigation stalls, Jason has time to move the money. If we wait until the structure is fully documented, the SEC can freeze assets immediately upon referral. He paused. I wanted you to know what we were dealing with before I made that call. I stood up from the table, walked to the window. 14 floors down South Grand Avenue was already filling up with morning traffic. Ordinary people driving to ordinary jobs and somewhere across the city. Emily was getting ready for work in her apartment, and she had no idea. She's going to marry him in 6 weeks, I said. I know. If I tell her now, without enough to show her, I pressed 2 fingers against the bridge of my nose, hard of feeling the pressure behind my eyes build into something hot and insistent. She won't believe it, and Jason will know someone's been looking. Yes, Marcus said quietly. That's the problem. I turned back from the window. My jaw was so tight it ached. Then we wait, I said. We build the full case, and you call me the second you're ready to go to the SEC. Marcus nodded. He closed the folder and held it out to me. I shook my head. Keep it, I said. Keep all of it. I don't want it in my house where Emily might see it. I walked out through the side entrance the way I'd come in, and I stood on the sidewalk in the November morning air, with my hands in my fists and my eyes burning, and I thought about Dorothy Finch in Arcadia, who was 74 years old and had handed over $180,000 to a man who had never intended to give it back. Then I called Emily to ask if she wanted to have lunch that weekend, because her voice was the only thing I could think of that would make any of this feel survivable. She picked up on the second ring. Dad, I was just thinking about you. Her voice was bright and warm and completely unguarded, and it cracked something open in my chest that I spent the rest of that phone call trying to hold together. Can we do that taco place in Eagle Rock? I've been craving it all week. Whatever you want, I said. Whatever you want, sweetheart. 7 days after the wedding, Emily called me at 6:45 in the morning. I was already awake. I'm always already awake at 6:45, standing at the kitchen counter with my first cup of coffee and the back door open to let in the cool December air. When her name appeared on my phone screen that early, my stomach dropped before I even answered. Hey, I said. Everything okay? Yeah. A pause that lasted 1 beat too long. I'm fine. Can I ask you something weird? Always. If someone transferred money out of a joint account without telling you, she said carefully, the words coming out, measured and precise in the way they did when she'd been thinking about something for a while before she said it out loud, and then gave you an explanation that made sense on the surface but didn't quite add up when you looked at the actual numbers. What would you do? My hand tightened around the coffee mug. I made myself breathe normally before I answered. I'd look in the numbers again, I said, very carefully, and I'd make sure I had a copy of everything before I said a word about it. Another pause. Okay, she said. Okay, that's helpful. Her voice shifted deliberately lighter. Sorry, just thinking through a work thing. I'll call you later, Dad. She hung up before I could say anything else. It wasn't a work thing. We both knew it wasn't a work thing. But Emily had always processed things in her own order, in her own time, and the fact that she'd called me at all told me she was further along in that process than she was letting on. What I didn't know until she told me, later, much later, after everything, was what had happened that morning, before she called me. She had woken up early before Jason and gone to the kitchen table with her laptop, the way she sometimes did when she couldn't sleep. She opened their joint bank account. She'd set up the online access herself during the week after the wedding. Because she was an accountant and setting up financial oversight was as natural to her as breathing, and she started scrolling through the transaction history. 3 transfers, separated by 2 days each, $9,000, $8,000, $6,000, all moving to the same destination account, a business entity called MCC Holdings LLC, which Emily had never heard of and which appeared nowhere in any document Jason had ever shown her. $23,000, gone in 6 days. She told me later that her first feeling wasn't anger. It was a cold, specific clarity, the same feeling she got at work when she was auditing a set of books and suddenly saw where the numbers had been manipulated. Everything went very still inside her, and her mind started moving fast and clean the way it did when a problem became concrete enough to solve. She took screenshots, every transaction, every account number, every timestamp. She forwarded them to her personal email, the one Jason didn't have access to, the one she'd maintained separately since college out of habit, and then she closed the laptop and sat at the kitchen table and waited for Jason to wake up. He came out at 7:30 in a good mood, hair still damp from the shower, smelling like the cedar soap he used pouring himself coffee, and talking about plans for New Year's Eve with a couple he'd met at a conference in October. He was animated and easy and completely at home in the kitchen of the apartment they had shared for exactly 1 week. Emily waited until he'd sat down across from her. I was looking at the joint account this morning, she said. Jason wrapped both hands around his mug. Something moved through his expression, quick, almost imperceptible, and then the easy smile returned. Yeah, everything looked good. There are 3 transfers to something called MCC Holdings, Emily said. 23,000 total. I don't recognize the entity. Jason set the mug down and leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed, the posture of a man who had answered difficult questions before and found them manageable. That's one of our operating accounts, he said. I moved some working capital over for a deal we're closing before the end of the year. Tax timing thing. It'll be back in the joint account by January 15th. MCC Holdings, Emily said. Can you send me the incorporation documents for that entity? The smile stayed exactly where it was. Emily, it's a routine transfer. I've been managing capital movements like this for 8 years. I know, she said pleasantly. I'd still like to see the documents. Jason looked at her for a moment, really looked at her, the way people do when they're recalibrating. And then he picked up his coffee again and said, I'll send them over this week. I've got a full day today. He stood up, pressed a kiss to the top of her head, and carried his mug back toward the bedroom. Emily sat at the kitchen table and listened to the sound of him moving through the apartment, and her jaw was so tight it ached all the way up to her temples, and she pressed both palms flat against the tabletop until her hands stopped shaking. He never sent the documents. That evening, she called me again. This time, she didn't pretend it was a work thing. Dad, she said, and her voice was steady, but thin, like a wire pulled too tight. Do you still have Marcus Webb's number? My heart rate spiked so fast I felt it in my throat. Why? I said, even though I already knew, even though I had been waiting for this call, dreading it, needing it for 6 weeks. Just in case, she said. I'll explain later. I want to have it. Okay. Okay, I said. I read her the number slowly. Then I said, Emily, whatever you're looking at, make sure you have copies of everything, somewhere safe. A breath on the other end of the line. Then, already done, Dad. A pause, and then she said very quietly, I learned from the best. My eyes burned so suddenly I had to set the phone down for a second and press the back of my hand against them. The party was the same evening. It had been on the calendar for 3 weeks, invitations sent Jason's associates already confirmed. There was no graceful way to cancel, and Emily, who had always understood that some situations require you to walk into the room before you walk out of it, didn't try. I want to be clear about that because the timing matters. Emily had hung up the phone 2 hours earlier, her voice thin and steady, and asking for Marcus Webb's number. And now she was standing across a candlelit living room in a blue dress with her hair up, holding a wine glass. She hadn't touched watching her husband work the room, like a man who had never done a dishonest thing in his life. Linda Mercer found me within 4 minutes of my arrival. I had barely gotten through the front door, barely handed my jacket to the young woman, collecting them near the entrance, when Linda appeared at my elbow with a champagne flute and a smile that had been applied with the same precision as her jewelry. Richard, she touched my arm briefly. I'm so glad you could make it. Her eyes moved from my face to my jacket, a different blazer from the wedding, charcoal gray still perfectly appropriate, and back again. You look comfortable, she said, in the tone people use when they mean the opposite. I am, I said honestly. She laughed a practice sound and turned toward the room. Jason's outdone himself tonight. Have you seen the house? They've done wonderful things with it. She lowered her voice by half a degree. Emily has good taste. Better than I expected, frankly. I looked at Linda Mercer and thought, you know, something is wrong with your son. You've always known. You just don't know how wrong. She gets it from her mother, I said, and walked away. The living room held maybe 30 people, Jason's business associates, a few neighbors, 2 couples I recognized from the wedding. The furniture had been rearranged to create space, and someone had set up a bar cart near the window that looked out onto the small courtyard between buildings. Standing near that cart, partially turned away from the main room, was a woman I didn't recognize, heavy-set mid-50s, dark complexion, wearing a rust-colored wrap dress and holding her phone in both hands at chest height in the particular way of someone who was recording rather than scrolling. Later, I would learn her name was Diane Okafor. She lived in the unit directly below Jason and Emily's. She had been invited as a neighborly gesture and had come because she was the kind of woman who showed up when invited. She was recording a short video to send to her daughter in New York, a running habit she had of documenting the interesting corners of her life. She was still recording when everything fell apart. Jason held court at the center of the room, animated and golden in the way of men who have practiced being watched. He talked about Mercer Capital's Q1 projections with the easy authority of someone who believed his own numbers, and the people around him nodded and asked follow-up questions and refilled their drinks. I stood near the wall with sparkling water and watched my daughter. Emily moved through the room correctly. She smiled when smiled it laughed. When laughter was appropriate, touched Jason's arm, twice in ways that looked natural. But I had been watching Emily Whitmore for 28 years, and I could see the difference between her real smile and the one she was producing tonight. Her real smile reached all the way up and slightly crinkled the outer corners of her eyes. This one stopped at her cheekbones. A man I didn't know, gray-haired, well-dressed, the kind of guest who arrives with a firm handshake, stopped beside Emily and said, loudly enough for the nearby cluster of people to hear, "Your husband is building something really remarkable. You must be incredibly proud." Emily looked at Jason across the room. He was laughing at something, head thrown back, completely at ease. She reached out and set her wine glass on the table beside her. The small click of glass on wood was barely audible, but I heard it. She straightened her shoulders. "Actually," she said, and her voice came out clear and carrying the voice she used when she had decided something and was done deciding. "There are a few things I think people here should probably know." The cluster of nearby guests turned toward her. Jason's laughter faded. Linda's champagne flute stopped halfway to her mouth, and the room began to go quiet in the way rooms do when something that cannot be taken back has just begun. She started with the bank account. Not dramatically, not with tears or a raised voice or any of the things a room full of people might brace themselves for when they sense a confrontation coming. She spoke the way she spoke when she was presenting quarterly numbers to a client, clear, sequential, impossible to interrupt without looking like the one with something to hide. "It's 7 days ago," Emily said, "$23,000 was transferred out of our joint account without my knowledge. The The money went to an entity called MCC Holdings LLC. When I asked about it this morning, I was told it was a routine capital movement that would be returned by January 15th. She paused exactly long enough to let that land. I've been a licensed accountant for 6 years. I know what routine capital movements look like. This wasn't one. The room had gone the particular kind of still that happens when 30 people simultaneously decide not to move. Jason set his drink down on the nearest surface too carefully. The deliberate steadiness of a man working very hard to appear unaffected. He crossed the room toward her, with his hands open at his sides, shoulders relaxed, performing calm, the way he performed everything else. "Emily." His voice was low and warm, and carried just enough injured confusion to sound genuine. "Sweetheart, what are you doing?" "I'm telling our guests the truth," she said. I thought that was appropriate given that several of them have invested money with Mercer Capital. A sound moved through the room, not quite a gasp, more like the collective intake of breath that precedes one. 2 of the guests near the bar cart exchanged a quick look. Linda Mercer's face went the particular white of someone who has just heard something they had been hoping never to hear out loud. Jason stepped closer to Emily. His jaw was tight now, the performance of calm starting to show its seams. "You need to stop," he said, his voice dropping to something that wasn't quite a whisper. "Right now. You have no idea what you're doing." Emily looked up at him. She was shorter by 5 inches, and she didn't step back a single centimeter. "I have a very clear idea," she said. "That's the problem for you." Something shifted in Jason's face then. It wasn't gradual. One moment he was performing injured calm, and the next moment he wasn't performing anything. He was just a man who had been backed into a corner in front of 30 witnesses, and had run out of the particular resource that had always gotten him out of corners before. His right hand came up fast. The sound of the slap was very loud in a quiet room. Emily's head turned with the impact. Her left hand flew up instinctively to her cheek. For one suspended moment, she stood absolutely still, not frozen, not shocked into paralysis, but the stillness of a person whose body is running a rapid internal assessment, cataloging what had just happened and what came next. Then Jason lunged. What happened in the following 4 seconds was something I had spent 16 years putting into my daughter's muscle memory and watching it execute in real time in a candlelit living room in Pasadena with 30 people looking on was the strangest experience of my life. Not because it was violent, because it was so completely not what Jason expected. She pivoted left. His momentum carried him forward into empty space. Her right forearm came up not to strike, but to redirect. And when his weight committed fully to the lunge and found nothing solid to land on, he went sideways and down. The corner of the heavy oak side table caught his right shoulder and collarbone on the way to the floor. The crack was audible from across the room. Jason made a sound I don't have a word for, somewhere between a shout and something much more raw, and collapsed onto his side on the hardwood floor, his right arm drawn up against his chest. His face gray with pain and shock, and something else I recognized after a moment as the particular humiliation of a man who had expected to be in control of this moment and found himself on the floor of his own living room instead. Emily stood over him. She was breathing hard, her chest rising and falling visibly, but her legs were planted and her hands were steady at her sides. Her cheek was red where he'd struck her a mark that was already darkening at the edges. She didn't cry. I had taken 1 step forward from my position near the wall when it happened, and I stopped myself. Not because I didn't want to go to her, because she was standing exactly the way I had taught her to stand, grounded, aware, assessing, and she didn't need me to come to her. She needed 30 people in that room to see her standing there on her own. Linda Mercer made a sound like a wounded animal from somewhere to my left. "Oh my God," she said, her voice climbing. "She attacked him. She attacked him, somebody call. Nobody's calling anything yet." The voice that came out of me was the voice I hadn't used in a very long time, flat and quiet, and carrying in the specific way that stops a room. Linda stopped talking mid-sentence. "Everyone stay where they are. Someone call 911 for the injury. Don't touch anything." I looked at my daughter. Emily looked back at me across the room. Her eyes were bright and dry and burning with something that was not triumph and not relief, but something harder and more durable than either of those things. And in the corner near the window, I saw Diane Okafor lower her phone. Slowly the screen still glowing red, and I understood that she had not stopped recording, not once. If you're still with me on Revenge Dad, right now before I tell you what happened next, drop the number 8 in the comments. Just the number. That's all I need to know you're here. Because what comes next is the part nobody saw coming, not even me. Heads up, parts of this story include fictional elements added for depth and a meaningful message. If that's not your thing, no hard feelings, you can step away anytime. The ambulance came at 9:42. I know the exact time because I was standing on the front steps of the building when the lights turned the corner onto the street, and I looked at my watch the way I always look at my watch when something is happening that I might need to account for later. 2 paramedics went upstairs with a gurney. 14 minutes later, they brought Jason down with his right arm immobilized against his chest, and his color still gray, and he looked at me once as they rolled him past a long, flat look that had nothing of pain in it and everything of calculation. Emily stood beside me on those steps. She had a dish towel pressed against her cheekbone, where the bruising had spread into something vivid and dark, and she was shaking, not from fear. She told me later, but from the particular physiological aftermath of adrenaline with nowhere left to go, the body's alarm system still ringing after the emergency had passed. Her teeth were chattering faintly, despite the fact that she had her arms wrapped around herself, and I had put my jacket around her shoulders 5 minutes earlier. "I need you to do something for me," I said quietly. "What?" Her voice came out unsteady, bumping against her chattering teeth. "I need you to go back inside and write down everything that happened tonight in the exact order it happened. Every word you said, every word he said, the time you put your glass down, everything." I turned to look at her directly. "Do it on your phone in your personal notes app, and do it before you sleep tonight while it's all still sharp." Emily nodded, her jaw tight, her eyes red at the corners, but dry. "Okay. And save every screenshot you took this morning. Back them up to the cloud right now tonight." "Already done," she said. 2 responding officers had stayed behind in the apartment to take statements. One of them came down the front steps toward us, a young man with a careful face and a notepad, and asked Emily if she was ready to come back inside and finish her account of the evening. She squared her shoulders, handed me back my jacket, and followed him up the stairs without looking back. I stood on the front steps alone and listened to the ambulance pull away. Before we left the building that night, one of the responding officers had told us we would need to come into the station the following morning to complete our formal statements. We did, Emily and I both separately the next day. That was where I met Detective Carol Hayes, who handled the case from the domestic violence unit, and handed me her card on the way out, with the instruction to call her directly if anything else came up. The first call from Marcus came at 11:15 that night. "I heard," he said before I could speak. Emily had called him herself directly from the apartment while the officers were still there. "I'm already pulling together what we have. Are you with her?" "She sent me home," I said. "She said she needed to do the statement alone, and she'd call me after." Marcus made a sound that might have been approval. "Good, that's the right call. The statement needs to be entirely hers." A pause. "Richard, whatever happens in the next 48 hours, however this gets characterized, she needs to say nothing to anyone except the officers and me. Nothing to Jason's family. Nothing to mutual friends. Nothing." "I'll tell her," I said. "Tell her tonight." I called Emily the moment I got off with Marcus. She picked up on the first ring, her voice steadier than I expected, the steadiness of someone who has been busy, who has had tasks to complete and has been completing them, which had always been Emily's way of managing the unbearable. "Marcus says nothing to anyone until he's spoken to you," I said. "He already called me," she said. "We talked for 20 minutes. Dad, he thinks Jason is going to try to flip the narrative." My stomach turned over. "Has he said anything to the officers?" "I don't know yet." A breath. "But when they loaded him onto the gurney, he looked at the paramedic and said he'd fallen. He'd fallen. That was all." Another breath, this one shorter. "He looked right at me when he said it." I sat in my car in the parking lot outside my building and pressed my free hand flat against the dashboard and felt the cold of it through my palm. He'd already started, right there on the gurney before they'd even cleared the building. He'd already chosen his version of the night. 48 hours later, I understood how fast that version had traveled. Emily called me on a Tuesday morning 2 days after the party, and the steadiness in her voice was gone. In its place was something I had heard exactly twice before in her life. Once when she was 10 years old, and I told her that her mother was not going to get better, and once when she was 17, and her best friend moved away without warning. A specific quality of stunned, the sound of someone who has just been handed a fact that their mind keeps rejecting. "Dad," her voice broke on the single syllable. "Dad, I just received court documents." My chest locked. What kind of documents? An emergency protective order. She pulled in a shaky breath that fractured in the middle. Jason filed for an emergency protective order against me. It was granted this morning. A sound escaped her, then not quite a sob, more like the sound a person makes when they've been holding something very heavy for a long time, and their grip finally slips, and she pressed it down hard and kept going. I'm the respondent dad. My name is on the wrong side of this order. He told them I attacked him without provocation. He told them he's afraid of me. The rage that moved through me in that moment was so clean and so cold, it almost felt like calm. I sat with it for exactly 3 seconds, which was all I allowed myself. Listen to me, I said, and my voice came out steady because it had to. An emergency protective order under California Family Code. Section 6250 can be filed on an ex parte basis, meaning a judge can grant it based on one person's A account without hearing the other side first. That's how it works. It is not a finding of guilt. It is not a conviction. It is a temporary measure and it can be challenged. I paused. This is the fight he wants to have, Emily. He wants you to panic. He wants you to call him or call Linda or say something he can use. You are not going to do any of those things. She was crying now quietly, the kind of crying that happens when someone has been holding themselves together through sheer will for 48 hours and simply runs out of will. Small, tight sounds that she was clearly trying to suppress, which made them worse to hear. I didn't do anything wrong, she said, her voice fractured and wet. I didn't start this. He hit me first, Dad. He hit me first, and then he came at me again, and I know, I said. My own throat was thick and burning. I know you did. I was there, and we are going to prove it. I gripped the phone until my knuckles went white. Call Marcus right now, the moment we hang up. Tell him about the order. Okay? A ragged breath. Okay. Emily. I waited until I heard her breathing even slightly. He made a mistake. He put this in writing. He filed a document with a court, and everything in that document is going to be measured against what actually happened that night. I paused. He doesn't know about Diane. A long beat of silence, and then something shifted in Emily's voice. Not hope exactly, something harder than hope, something that had edges. No, she said slowly. He doesn't. Call Marcus, I said. Right now. Emily called me at 9:17 on a Tuesday evening, 4 days after she'd received the court documents. I was in the kitchen rinsing a plate, and when I saw her name on the screen, something in my chest tightened before I even answered a reflex I'd developed over the past week, the body's way of preparing itself for the next thing in a sequence that kept producing next things. Dad! Her voice was different from any version I'd heard in the past 11 days. Not the stunned quality of the EPO call, not the brittle steadiness of the night of the party. This was compressed, controlled in the way that people control themselves when they are standing alone somewhere frightening and don't want to make it worse by falling apart. Someone broke my car window. I'm in the parking garage at work. There's a note on the front seat. I turned off the faucet. Are you hurt? No, I'm fine. A short breath. The note says drop everything or next time it won't be the window. I set the plate down on the counter. Don't touch the note. Don't touch anything in the car. Go to the elevator lobby right now and wait there where there are cameras. I'm leaving in 2 minutes. Dad, you don't have to elevator lobby, I said. Right now, I'll call you when I'm close. I drove to downtown Los Angeles in 22 minutes, which required some decisions about speed limits that I won't detail here. I know that stretch of the 10 freeway well enough to run it in my sleep, and my mind was not on the driving. My mind was running through the sequence of decisions in front of me, not with panic, but with the particular cold clarity that takes over when the situation is serious enough to crowd out everything else. There were things I was trained to do in situations like this, efficient things that would have resolved the immediate problem faster than anything a courtroom process could manage and without the paperwork. I thought about all of those options on that drive. I cataloged them the way you catalog tools. This one does this, that one does that. Here are the trade-offs. And then I put every single one of them away because none of them were the right answer. Not for Emily, not for this. The right answer was the one that would still be standing in 6 months. Emily was exactly where I'd told her to be, the elevator lobby on level B2 standing under the fluorescent lights with her arms wrapped around herself, and her face doing the thing it did when she was working very hard not to show what she was feeling. When she saw me come through the stairwell door, her whole body seemed to exhale, and she crossed the lobby in 4 steps and pressed her face against my shoulder, and her hands gripped the back of my jacket, and she shook hard, once the way a person shakes when the thing they've been bracing for finally arrives and turns out to be as bad as they feared. "I've got you," I said into her hair. "You're okay, I've got you." She pulled back after a moment and pressed both hands against her face, gathering herself back in. Her eyes were red and wet, but her jaw was set. "Show me the car," I said. She led me to it, a blue Honda Civic third row from the east wall driver's side window, gone in a scatter of cubed glass across the seat and the console and the pavement below. I crouched and looked without touching. The note was on the driver's seat, white paper folded, once block letters visible through the fold. I took out my phone and photographed it from 4 angles. Then I photographed the car, the surrounding space, the position of the security camera mounted on the east pillar, angled to cover the main lane, but not I noted the third row. "There's a camera at the entrance ramp," I said, straightening up. "Another one at the elevator bank. The angle on the east pillar misses this row, but anyone who came in through the ramp or used the elevator would be on footage." Emily was watching me. "How do you know where all the cameras are?" "I know where cameras usually are," I said. "It's a habit." I took 3 more photographs of the glass pattern on the ground. The distribution tells you something about the direction and force of the impact, and then I put my phone away. "Come sit in my car. I need to make a call." We sat in my car in the lane behind hers, engine running for the heat, and I scrolled to a number I had entered into my phone 8 days ago at the LAPD precinct, where Emily and I had both given our initial statements about the night of the party. Detective Carol Hayes had handed me her card when we left and said, "If anything else comes up, call this number directly, not the main line." The way she'd said it had told me she already expected something else would come up. She answered on the second ring. "Detective Hayes." I kept my voice level. "It's Richard Whitmore. I'm in the parking garage at my daughter's office building in downtown Los Angeles. Someone broke her car window tonight and left a threatening note on the seat. I have photographs of the scene, and I believe there's usable security footage at the entrance ramp and elevator bank." A brief pause, the pause of someone switching into a different mode. "Is your daughter with you?" "Yes, she's uninjured." "Don't move the vehicle. Don't touch the note. I'll have a unit there within 15 minutes, and I'll come myself." Another pause, shorter. "Mr. Whitmore, you said you have photographs." "Systematic," I said. 4 angles on the note, full coverage of the vehicle, the glass distribution, and the camera positions. A beat. Then, "I'll be there in 15 minutes, she said, and hung up. Emily had been listening. She turned to look at me in the dim light of the parking garage, her eyes still red, her cheeks still faintly marked from 4 days ago. "Dad," she said, and her voice was frayed but direct. "What did you used to do before Pasadena, before the consulting work and the training contracts and all the things you've never really explained?" She pressed her fingers against her mouth for a moment, collecting herself. "Because normal people don't know where all the cameras are. Normal people don't take systematic photographs of a crime scene. Normal people don't have the direct number of a detective before they've even—" Her voice cracked. She pushed through it. "Who are you exactly?" I looked at my daughter in the passenger seat of my car, in a parking garage in downtown Los Angeles, and I felt the truth of the moment settle over me like something I'd been carrying for a long time and had finally been given permission to put down. "That's someone who spent a lot of years making sure people like you stayed safe," I said, "and who has spent the last 11 years being very glad he no longer has to do it professionally." I held her gaze. "What I did then is not what matters now. What matters now is that I know exactly what to do with what happened tonight, and I'm going to do it." Emily stared at me for a long moment, her jaw trembling faintly. Then she reached over and gripped my hand hard enough that I felt the bones of my fingers pressed together and held on. We waited for Detective Hayes without letting go. I didn't sleep much that week, not because I was afraid fear wasn't the right word for what I was feeling. It was closer to the state I used to maintain during long assignments years ago, when the situation required you to stay partially online, even while you rested. One ear always working, one part of the mind never fully going dark. It's a useful state when the circumstances call for it, and a miserable one when they don't. And I had spent the better part of a decade training myself out of it. That week I let it back in. I had done one thing the morning after the parking garage that I hadn't mentioned to Emily or to Hayes. I had driven to a hardware store on Foothill Boulevard and purchased a small interior-facing camera the kind that mounts discreetly inside a window and records to a cloud account activated by motion. I installed it that afternoon in the front window of my living room, angled to cover the driveway, the street, and the front face of my house. I ran a second one from a bedroom window to cover the side yard and the vehicle parked at the curb. I did this because I had spent a long time reading the way situations develop, and this one was developing in a direction that made the front of my property feel like something worth watching. I was right. On the third night after the parking garage, which put us at 2 in the morning, on a Thursday 14 days after the wedding, I was lying on top of my bed, covers fully dressed, when I heard the first sound. Not a loud sound, a scrape, and then a pause, and then the particular hollow knock of something hard contacting glass. I was on my feet before the echo finished. I did not turn on any lights. I had learned a long time ago that darkness belongs to the person who chooses to use it, and I chose to use it now. I moved through my own house by memory, down the hallway, left at the kitchen doorway, through the laundry room to the back door, and let myself out into the side yard without making a sound. The night was cold and clear, the kind of California winter night that reminds you the desert is not far away. I pressed myself against the side of the house and moved toward the front yard along the narrow passage between my house and the fence, and I stopped at the corner where I could see the street without being seen from it. A man stood in front of my house. He was heavyset, wearing a dark hoodie with the hood up, and he was moving with the particular carelessness of someone who believes they are unobserved. He had already done whatever had made the first sound. I could see the front window of my living room had a crack running from the lower left corner toward the center, a rock or something similar, thrown hard enough to fracture but not break through. Now he was moving toward my car at the curb, and he had something in his hand that caught the orange light of the street lamp, a marker or a paint stick, the kind that leaves permanent marks on automotive paint. I stood at the corner of my house in the dark and I watched him work. He wrote 3 words on the driver's side door of my car. Then he stepped back and looked at what he'd written, with his head tilted slightly, assessing it the way a person assesses something they've made, and the movement brought his face into the full light of the street lamp for 2 full seconds. The camera in my front window had been recording since the moment he'd appeared in the driveway. The angle was direct, the light was sufficient. His face was as clear on that footage as if I had taken his photograph myself. He looked around once, a quick, careless scan, and walked away up the street without hurrying. I waited until he turned the corner. Then I went back inside still, without turning on any lights, and sat down at my kitchen table in the dark and thought through the next steps with the same deliberateness I would have applied to any problem that had a correct sequence of actions and an incorrect one. I could call 911. That was the obvious answer, and it was partially right. A report needed to be filed. But a 911 call at 2 in the morning would bring a patrol unit and a report number, and what I had was something more specific than that. What I had was footage, clear facial footage of a man who had now participated in 2 incidents connected to the same underlying case. I picked up my phone and called Hayes directly. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice alert in the way of someone who sleeps lightly by professional necessity. "Whitmore, I have footage of the individual who just came to my property," I said. "Clear facial 2, full seconds under direct streetlight. He's the same build as the description from the parking garage incident." A pause short the length of someone making a decision. "How clear?" "Clear enough to identify," I said. "The camera is cloud synced. I can share the file in the next 30 seconds. "Send it." I heard movement on her end, covers the creak of a chair. "Is he still in the area?" "He walked north on my street approximately 4 minutes ago." "I didn't follow." "Good." The word came out flat and approving at the same time. "Send me the footage. I'll have a unit do a pass of the neighborhood. Come into the station at 7 this morning, bring the file and anything else you have from the parking garage night." A brief pause. "Mr. Whitmore, the camera. You put it up after the parking garage incident?" "The morning after," I said. Another pause. This one, a different quality. The particular pause of someone adjusting their understanding of the person they're speaking with. "I'll see you at 7, she said. I sent her the file, then I made coffee. I didn't drink and sat at the kitchen table until the sky outside started going from black to the deep blue that comes an hour before actual dawn. And I thought about Emily sleeping in her apartment across the city, and about Jason Mercer lying in whatever bed he was lying in tonight, with his arm in a sling, and his lawyer's phone numbers and his contacts, and about Dorothy Finch in Arcadia, who was 74 years old and had trusted the wrong person with everything she had. At 6:30, I got up, washed my face, and drove to the LAPD station on Foothill. Hayes was already there, sitting across from a man I didn't recognize when I came through the door. She looked up at me and said, "Good, sit down." She turned her laptop toward me. The footage from my camera was paused on the frame where the man's face was clearest under the street lamp. "Do you recognize him?" I looked at the frozen image. "No," I said. "I do," Hayes said. She turned the laptop back toward herself. "His name is Mickey Vega. He has a prior record in Los Angeles County, 2 misdemeanor convictions, 1 felony plea from 2019 that he served 18 months on." She looked at me steadily. "He is associated with a man named Darius Cole, who operates out of the Compton area." She paused. "Neither of these men has any obvious connection to your daughter or your son-in-law through legitimate channels, which means someone hired them. And given the timing, I said. "I'm opening a separate criminal file," Hayes said. "Criminal threatening under Penal Code Section 422. Witness tampering under Section 136.1. 2 felony charges separate from the domestic violence case and the financial investigation." She held my gaze. "This changes the scope of what we're dealing with, Mr. Whitmore. I want you to understand that." My jaw was tight, and my hands on the table in front of me were very still. "I understand," I said. Hayes looked at me for a moment with the expression of someone deciding how much to say. Then she said, "You handled this correctly. Both incidents. Most people in your position would have done something that would have complicated the case considerably." She paused. "I'd like to know at some point what you did before you moved to Pasadena, but that's a conversation for after this is resolved." "Agreed," I said. 2 things happened on the same Tuesday morning, 2 days after Mickey Vega had stood under the street lamp in front of my house and written 3 words on the door of my car. The first thing came from a woman I had met exactly once for less than 4 minutes in the lobby of Marcus Webb's office building. The second thing came from a courthouse file that had been sitting in Queens County, New York for 8 months, waiting for someone to think to look. I learned about both of them within 40 minutes of each other, and by the time I'd processed what they meant together, I had to sit down in Marcus's parking garage and grip the steering wheel with both hands and breathe through my nose for a while before I trusted myself to drive. Marcus called me first at 8:47 in the morning. "Get here," he said. "Now, side entrance." I was at his office in 23 minutes. He met me in the hallway outside the back conference room. Unusual. Marcus almost never stood in hallways. He was a man who conducted his business at tables, with doors closed, and the expression on his face was one I had seen exactly once before years ago, when a situation we were both involved in had turned out to be significantly larger than either of us had understood going in. "A woman called the office this morning," he said before I had fully stopped walking. "She identified herself as Diane Okafor. She said she lives in the unit below your daughter's apartment and that she was at the party on December 7th. He paused. "She said she has video." My heart lurched sideways in my chest. "How much video?" 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Marcus opened the conference room door and held it. "I've already watched it twice. Come in and watch it yourself." He had it pulled up on his laptop, paused at the opening frame, the living room of Jason and Emily's apartment, the guests, the bar cart near the window, the warm light that made everything look more pleasant than it had been. The timestamp in the lower right corner read 8:47 p.m. Marcus pressed play. I watched 4 minutes and 17 seconds of the most important footage I had ever seen in my life. I watched Emily set her wine glass down on the table. I watched her speak. I couldn't hear the words clearly through the ambient noise of the room, but I could read the stillness that came over the space as she spoke. I watched Jason cross toward her. I watched his right hand come up and connect with her face, the impact visible and unambiguous from Diane's angle near the window. I watched Emily's head turn with it. And then I watched what happened next. The pivot, the redirect, Jason's momentum carrying him into empty space, the corner of the oak table, the sound even through a phone's microphone captured from across a room, the crack of Jason's collarbone hitting solid wood was audible. And then Emily standing, upright, still. Marcus stopped the video. My throat was so tight I had to clear it twice before I could speak. "She called you directly," I said. "Not Emily, not me, you." "She looked up the firm," Marcus said. "She said she didn't want to put pressure on Emily by going through her directly. She said she wanted whoever was handling the case to have the footage without Emily feeling obligated. He paused. She also said something else. She said, and I'm quoting her directly here, "I've been the person nobody believed before. I wasn't going to sit on something that could help someone who deserved to be believed." Something moved through my chest at that. A complicated thing, gratitude and sorrow tangled together, because behind those words was a story I didn't know and didn't need to know to understand the weight of it. "I need to meet her," I said. "She's coming in at 2 o'clock this afternoon," Marcus said. "But there's something else. Hayes called while you were driving here. He told me about the second thing. In the process of running Mickey Vega and Darius Cole through LAPD databases and cross-referencing them against known associates and recent criminal activity, Hayes had run Jason Mercer's name through the National Criminal Database as standard procedure. His current legal name produced the results they already knew about. But Hayes, being the kind of investigator who pulled threads until they either broke or led somewhere, had also run the name through interstate marriage and court records. What she found was a filing from Queens County Civil Court dated 8 months before Jason and Emily's wedding. A man named Kyle Merritt, born Jason Kyle Mercer, who had legally changed his first name in 2021 through a New York state court, proceeding a process that was entirely legal and entirely invisible unless someone thought to look for it, had been the subject of an order of protection filed by a woman named Rebecca Santos. The filing cited a pattern of financial control, an incident involving physical force during an argument about money taken from a joint account, and threatening behavior in the weeks that followed. The order had been granted. It had expired after 1 year. Rebecca Santos had not renewed it. The incident that had prompted the filing had occurred according to the court documents during an argument about money that had been moved from a shared account without her knowledge or consent. I sat in Marcus's conference room and read the summary Hayes had emailed over, and my hands were absolutely still, on the table in front of me, and behind my eyes was a pressure that I recognized as the specific kind of rage that comes not from surprise, but from confirmation. The particular fury of being told that the thing you feared was true, and that it had been true before your daughter ever met this man, and that the system had processed it and filed it and moved on, and never connected the dots until now. How many women?" I said to Marcus. My voice came out flat and careful, the way it came out when I was controlling something large. Marcus looked at me steadily. "That we know of 2. That we know of," I said. He held my gaze. "Hayes is pulling the full Queens file today. She believes the pattern documentation will be admissible in the California hearing under Evidence Code 1109, which allows prior incidents of domestic violence to be introduced to establish pattern of conduct." He paused. "Richard, this is significant. Combined with Diane's video, this changes the entire architecture of what we can present." I stood up from the table and walked to the window. 14 floors below the city was doing what cities do in the middle of a Tuesday morning, moving indifferent full of people who had no idea what was being assembled in this room. I pressed 2 fingers against the glass and felt the cold of it. "Set up the meeting with Diane Okafor," I said, "and tell Hayes I want to be there when she walks through the Queens file." At 2 o'clock that afternoon, Diane Okafor walked into Marcus's conference room wearing a dark green coat and carrying a canvas tote bag, and looking exactly like what she was, a woman in her late 50s who had come from somewhere else to do something she had decided was necessary. She was shorter than I'd realized at the party, and her face had the particular quality of someone who has learned to take up the precise amount of space the situation requires, no more, no less. She looked at me when she came in, and something in her expression shifted recognition, and something behind it that I couldn't immediately name. "You were at the party," she said, "near the wall." I said. "I'm Emily's father." Diane Okafor set her canvas bag on the table and sat down across from me and folded her hands on the surface and said, "Then I think you should know that I don't need to be thanked. I need to know it's going to count for something." My throat ached. "It already has," I said, "and it's going to count for a great deal more." She held my gaze for a long moment, the direct assessing gaze of a woman who had heard promises before and knew the difference between the ones that meant something and the ones that didn't. Then she nodded once and opened her canvas bag and took out her phone. "Show me where to send the file," she said. "The thing about men like Jason Mercer is that they build their entire world on the assumption that everyone around them can be managed, that loyalty is a commodity you purchase and maintain through continued payment, and that as long as the payments keep coming, the machinery keeps running. The problem with that assumption is what happens when the payments stop. On the 17th day after the wedding, the Securities and Exchange Commission issued an emergency asset freeze order against Mercer Capital Group and all associated accounts, including the Delaware shell entity Marcus had documented. The freeze was the direct result of a formal referral Marcus had filed with the SEC's Los Angeles regional office 4 days earlier, supported by the financial documentation he'd been building since November. Under the Securities Exchange Act Section 21D, the SEC can seek and obtain emergency relief from a federal court to freeze assets when there is a reasonable belief that ongoing fraud is causing irreparable harm to investors. The court had agreed. Every account Jason Mercer controlled went cold overnight. I learned about it from Marcus at 6 in the morning in a phone call that lasted 4 minutes and ended with him saying, "The dominoes are starting to fall. Be ready." What I didn't know yet was that on the same morning the freeze order was executed, a man named Darius Cole woke up in his apartment in Compton and checked his phone and found that a transfer he had been expecting from a business account connected to Mercer Capital had not arrived. He checked again. He called a number. The number went to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail again. Darius Cole was not a patient man, and he was not a forgiving one, and he understood immediately what a frozen account meant for the money that had been promised to him. Hayes told me all of this 3 days later, sitting across from me in the same back conference room at Marcus's office where I had watched Diane Okafor's video. She had a manila folder on the table in front of her, and her hands folded on top of it, and she had the particular expression of someone who has spent several days moving pieces into position and is now ready to show you the board. "We identified Cole through the camera footage from both incidents," she said, "cross-referenced with Mickey Vega's known associates in the LAPD system. Once we had his name, we ran his financials and found 3 transfers from a Mercer Capital subsidiary account over the past 6 weeks." She paused. "When the freeze hit, those transfers stopped. Cole made 4 calls to Jason Mercer's personal cell phone in the 24 hours after the freeze was executed. None of them were answered." I sat with that image for a moment. Darius Cole in Compton calling a number that rang and rang and rang, while Jason Mercer somewhere across the city watched his entire constructed world begin to come apart, and decided that an unanswered phone was easier than the conversation on the other end of it. "When did you approach him?" I asked. 2 days after the freeze," Hayes said, "before he knew we had him on footage. That's important. He didn't know his face was on camera from either incident when I sat down across from him. He thought he was being contacted as a potential witness, not a suspect." A slight pause. "I offered him a cooperation agreement. Reduction from felony to misdemeanor on the criminal threatening charge, no additional charges related to the parking garage incident in exchange for full cooperation, including any recorded communications." "And he had recorded communications," I said. Hayes opened the manila folder. Inside was a printed transcript, several pages with an audio file reference number at the top. "Darius Cole recorded his conversations with Jason Mercer as a matter of personal habit," she said. "He told me he'd been doing it for years with anyone who hired him for work he considered sensitive. Insurance, he called it." She turned the transcript toward me. "This is from a call placed by Jason Mercer to Cole's number 11 days before the parking garage incident." I looked at the transcript. The formatting was standard timestamp, speaker identification, verbatim text. I found the line Hayes was pointing to, and I read it. Jason's voice, reduced to black text on white paper, said, "Just scare them enough to make them go away. I don't care how you do it. I don't want details. I just want it handled." The words sat on the page in front of me, and I sat with them for a long time, reading them again, and my hands on the table were so still they might have been carved there. And behind my eyes the pressure built until it was almost a physical thing, hot and solid, and located somewhere between my temples. My daughter. He had said those words about my daughter, about Emily, who had worn her mother's earrings at the wedding, and cried in the bridal suite and learned to fall without hurting herself in a backyard in Pasadena when she was 12 years old. He had picked up a phone and said, "I don't care how you do it," and hung up and gone back to whatever he was doing, and had not thought about it again. I set the transcript down carefully on the table. I flattened it with one hand, smoothing a corner that didn't need smoothing. "What does this add?" I asked. My voice came out level. I was proud of that. Hayes's expression was steady and watchful. "The audio establishes direct instruction from Jason Mercer to a third party to commit acts designed to intimidate witnesses in an active legal proceeding. That's criminal threatening under 422 and witness tampering under 136.1, both felonies. Combined with the footage from your camera and the parking garage and Vega's cooperation, we have a complete evidentiary chain. She paused. This is no longer just a domestic violence case with a financial fraud component. This is a coordinated campaign of witness intimidation. The DA's office is very interested in coordinated campaigns of witness intimidation. I looked at her. How soon? The hearing is in less than 2 weeks, Hayes said. Between now and then, I'm coordinating with the DA and with the FBI field office. The financial case has grown larger than what Marcus's referral initially covered. She leaned forward slightly. Richard, how is Emily? The question landed differently than I expected, not procedural, genuinely personal. I thought about Emily, who had been going to work every day and coming home to an apartment that had someone else's fingerprints all over it, and sleeping with her phone on the nightstand and calling me every evening at 8 o'clock just to talk, just to hear a voice that wasn't inside her own head. She's holding, I said. She's tired and she's angry and she's holding. Hayes nodded slowly. Tell her the audio exists. Don't play it for her. She doesn't need to hear his voice saying those things about her. Just tell her it exists and that it means what she already knew is now provable. She paused. Sometimes that's what people need. Not the victory yet. Just the confirmation that they weren't wrong about what happened to them. I drove home from Marcus's office that afternoon, and I sat in my driveway for a while before going inside, watching a neighbor's kid ride a bicycle up and down the sidewalk with the particular concentrated effort of someone who had recently learned how and was not yet ready to take it for granted. When I finally called Emily at 8 o'clock, I told her what Hayes had said to tell her. There was a silence on the line, a real one, the kind that comes from someone receiving information their nervous system needs a moment to process. Then Emily said very quietly, I knew it was him. I knew it was him who sent them. I know you knew, I said. Now there's a tape that knows it too. Emily made a sound that was half a laugh and half something that had been wound too tight for too long, finally finding a millimeter of give. Less than 2 weeks, she said. Less than 2 weeks, I said. Okay, a breath. Okay, Dad, I can do less than 2 weeks. You can do it, I said. You've already done 20 days. I spent a lot of time in those weeks thinking about Linda Mercer, not with anger, which surprised me when I noticed it. Anger would have been easier. Anger has a shape, a direction, something to push against. What I felt when I thought about Linda was something murkier and more uncomfortable than anger. Something closer to the feeling you get when you look at a situation and understand against your preference why someone made the choices they made even when those choices were wrong. Linda Mercer was 62 years old. She had been widowed 6 years earlier, which I learned from Marcus the same afternoon he told me everything else. Her husband had left her financially comfortable, but not wealthy. Comfortable in the way of someone who would need to be careful, who could not afford significant losses, who would find the idea of a son running a successful investment firm very reassuring, especially if that firm produced early returns that seemed to confirm the story she was being told. She had invested $340,000 into Mercer Capital Group, not as a gift to her son, as an investor. Her own money from her own accounts placed into the fund that Jason managed because the early returns had been good, and because he was her son, and because there is a particular blindness that comes from loving someone and wanting to believe the version of them they present to you. Marcus told me the SEC had found her account on a Wednesday 3 days after the asset freeze. He called me while I was in the backyard, pulling weeds, a thing I do when I need to do something with my hands that requires no thought, and his voice had the careful quality it used when the news was complicated. She knew the fund wasn't fully licensed, he said. She didn't know the full scope, but she knew enough that when her own attorney reviewed the situation, the advice was immediate and unambiguous: cooperate fully with the government as a material witness before they have the opportunity to consider her as a potential defendant. I sat back on my heels in the dirt. She's going to testify against him. She already has, Marcus said. The SEC took her statement yesterday. She gave them names, investors she had personally referred to Jason, conversations she had overheard in which the fund's performance was described to potential investors in ways she knew were not accurate. She also confirmed that she was aware prior to the wedding that Mercer Capital had received at least 2 complaints from early investors that had been resolved quietly. A pause. She attended the wedding knowing this. I set down the garden trowel I'd been holding and looked at my hands dirtied from the soil and thought about Linda Mercer standing at that wedding reception in her impeccable dress, with her practiced smile and her champagne flute, looking at my jacket and finding it wanting, while she carried the knowledge of what her son had built and what it was doing to the people who trusted it. "How is she?" I asked, and I was genuinely uncertain why I asked it. Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Her attorney says she hasn't been sleeping. She's been crying, apparently. A lot." Another pause. "She told the SEC investigator that she convinced herself it would work itself out, that Jason would find a way to make the numbers real, that she just needed to give him more time. I understood that. I didn't forgive it. There were 47 people, Dorothy Finch among them, whose lives had been meaningfully diminished by what Jason had done and what Linda had chosen not to stop, but I understood the mechanism of it. The way love and self-interest can braid together into something that looks from the inside like loyalty and looks from the outside like complicity. Emily called me that evening. She'd heard about Linda from Marcus directly, he'd told her, because she had a right to know and because he believed correctly that Emily could handle truth better than she could handle being protected from it. "She knew," Emily said. Her voice was not shaking. It was the steady, measured voice she used when she was working very hard to think clearly about something instead of just feeling it. "Maybe not everything, but she knew the fun wasn't right. She knew before the wedding. She came to our wedding, Dad. She gave a toast, a breath. She told me she hoped I'd make Jason as happy as he deserved to be." My jaw tightened until it ached. "Emily, I'm not falling apart," she said, cutting me off not unkindly. "I just want to say it out loud to someone." She knew. She chose not to say anything because it would have cost her too much. And now she's going to save herself by telling the truth that she should have told 8 months ago. A pause. "I'm not angry at her the way I'm angry at him, but I'm angry." "You're allowed to be," I said. "I know I am." She exhaled a long, controlled breath that told me she was working through something methodical. "Marcus said the FBI is getting involved. Federal charges." "Wire fraud," I said, "and money laundering. The shell company in Delaware and the accounts in Nevada and Florida put it across state lines, which makes it federal jurisdiction. Under 18 United States Code, Section 1343, wire fraud carries a maximum of 20 years per count. Money laundering under Section 1956 carries another 20. I paused. "He is looking at a very long time, Emily." She absorbed that quietly, the way she absorbed difficult information, not reacting immediately, just letting it settle into its proper place. "Dorothy Finch," she said finally. "Yes," I said. "And the other 46 people." "Yes." "Good," Emily said. The word came out flat and precise, not triumphant, just the sound of a person who has weighed something and found the correct answer. "Good, that's right." We talked for another 20 minutes about nothing in particular. A television show she'd been watching about the problem with the accounting software at her office, whether I needed anything from the grocery store when she came over on the weekend. The ordinary texture of a life that was still going on underneath everything else, still requiring attention, still insisting on its own continuation, regardless of what was happening around it. When she hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a while with the phone on the table in front of me. I thought about Linda Mercer crying in a house in Newport Beach, carrying the weight of what she'd chosen not to do when she still had the chance to do it. I thought about the difference between that and what I had done, the months of careful distance, the folder Marcus had locked away, the wedding I had stood through knowing what I knew. The difference, I decided, was intention. Linda had known and stayed quiet to protect herself and the money she had placed in her son's hands. I had known and stayed quiet to protect the investigation that would eventually protect everyone Jason had harmed. Those were not the same choice dressed in the same clothes. They just looked similar from a certain angle in a certain light if you weren't looking carefully. I had to believe that. I found sitting in my kitchen that evening that I did. 2 days later, Marcus called to tell me that the FBI field office in Los Angeles had formally opened a parallel investigation into Mercer Capital Group, wire fraud, money laundering, interstate financial crimes. "The hearing is in 6 days, Marcus said. "Are we ready?" I asked. A pause, the specific pause of a man who has spent 30 years in law and knows that ready is always relative. "We are more ready than they are," he said. "That's the only version of ready that matters." Marcus laid out the full federal picture on a Thursday afternoon, 3 days before the hearing. He had arranged for Emily and me to come in together. Unusual, he typically met with us separately to keep the information channels clean. And when we arrived, he had the conference room set up with printed summaries at each seat and a laptop open at the head of the table. Emily sat to my left. She had come from work still in her office clothes, a gray blazer over a dark blouse, and she had a notepad in front of her, because she was the kind of person who wrote things down when she needed to understand them. Marcus sat down, opened the top folder, and said, "The total documented loss across all 47 investors is $1.8 million. Emily's pen stopped moving. She looked up from her notepad. $1.8 million, Marcus said again evenly. That is the figure the FBI has confirmed through forensic accounting of the Mercer Capital, accounts the Delaware entity, and the associated Nevada and Florida accounts. It represents funds invested and not return net of the manufactured returns Jason paid to early investors using later investors' money." He turned to the second page. The breakdown is significant. 31 of the 47 investors are over the age of 65, 14 are over 70. The average investment was just under $39,000. The largest single investment, he paused briefly. The largest single investment was $180,000. I looked at the page. Dorothy Finch, Arcadia. The name I had first read in this same room, in this same chair, 4 months ago, when the folder had been thinner and the situation had been something I still hoped might resolve itself before it became what it had become. "I want to meet her," Emily said. Her voice was quiet, but certain. Marcus looked at her. "I thought you might." He closed the folder. "She's agreed to come in tomorrow morning. She said yes immediately when I asked. She said she'd like to meet Emily." We were both there at 9 the next morning when Dorothy Finch came through the door. She was smaller than I'd imagined, though I couldn't have said what I'd been imagining. Perhaps that a woman who had been through what she'd been through would somehow look the part, would carry it visibly, the way people sometimes carry great losses. Dorothy Finch did not look like that. She was a trim woman in her mid-70s with short silver hair and a dark blue cardigan and reading glasses pushed up on her head, and she came in with her purse over her arm and shook Marcus's hand and then looked at Emily and said, "You're the wife." "I was," Emily said. Dorothy Finch made a sound, not quite a laugh, something shorter and more rueful. "I know how that feels," she said. "Sit down, honey, let's talk." They sat across from each other at the conference table, and I sat at the end, and Marcus positioned himself near the window, and for the next 40 minutes, Dorothy Finch told us her story. She had been an elementary school librarian for 31 years in the Arcadia Unified School District. She had retired at 68 with a pension that covered her basic expenses and a savings account she had built carefully over 3 decades, small contributions year after year, the accumulated patience of a woman who understood that money saved slowly was the only kind that lasted. The account had held at its peak just over $200,000. She had been introduced to Mercer Capital through a friend at her church, a woman she had known for 20 years, who had invested earlier and received a quarterly return that seemed too good to be true, but came with enough paperwork and professional language to seem legitimate. Dorothy had done what due diligence she knew how to do. She had looked up the company online, she had read the materials Jason had sent, she had asked questions and received answers that were technically accurate in the ways that mattered to her, and deliberately vague in the ways that would have mattered to someone with more financial expertise. She had invested $180,000. "That was in March," she said. "I got one quarterly return, in June, $800. She folded her hands on the table, steady hands, the hands of a woman who had spent decades handling books and helping children find the right ones. Then in August the returns stopped coming. Jason's office stopped returning calls, and then in December I got a letter from the SEC telling me that the accounts had been frozen and that I was a victim of investment fraud. She said the word victim, the way people say words that don't quite fit the shape of their experience, like she was trying it on and finding it both accurate and insufficient. Emily's jaw was tight. Her eyes were bright and dry and fixed on Dorothy with an intensity that I recognized the expression she wore when she was refusing to look away from something that deserved to be looked at directly. "I'm sorry," Emily said. The words came out low and genuine, stripped of any of the formal quality that apologies sometimes take on when the situation is large enough to make simple language feel inadequate. "I'm sorry he did this to you. I'm sorry I didn't." Her voice caught and she pressed her lips together for a moment, and then she kept going. I didn't know about the fund until after the wedding, but I'm sorry I didn't find a way to know sooner. Dorothy Finch looked at Emily for a long moment. Then she reached across the table and put her hand over Emily's, a gesture so direct and uncomplicated that it seemed to reorganize the air in the room. You didn't do this, Dorothy said firmly. He did, and you're the one who started unraveling it. She squeezed Emily's hand once and then withdrew hers and sat back. I'm 74 years old. I can't get that money back, and I know that. What I can do is make sure there's a record. Make sure what he did is written down somewhere permanent with his name on it. She looked at Emily steadily. That's why I'm here. Not for the money, for the record. Emily's chin trembled once hard, and then she pulled it back under control with a visible effort that made my chest ache to watch. The hearing is in 2 days, she said. I'm going to be there, and I'm going to make sure the judge knows what happened to you specifically, not just the number, you. Dorothy tilted her head slightly. You look like someone who keeps her word. My father taught me that, Emily said. Dorothy looked at me, then a direct, clear look, the look of a woman who had spent 30 years assessing which children needed, which kinds of attention, and had gotten very good at it. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. After Dorothy left, Emily and I stood in the lobby of Marcus's building, waiting for the elevator, and neither of us spoke for a moment that felt longer than it was. Then Emily turned to me and said, I'm going to need you to sit in the back of the courtroom on Monday and not react to anything. I know, I said, because if I look at you and you're reacting, I'll react. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were glassy at the corners. And I need to not react. I pressed the elevator button again, even though it was already lit. I'll be a statue, I said. Emily looked at me, and her mouth did something that was almost a smile. The real kind, the one that reached the corners of her eyes, and she said, You've never been a statue in your life, Dad. The elevator opened. We got in. I let the almost smile sit in my chest all the way down to the lobby, because there were only 2 days left, and I was going to need everything I could carry into that courtroom. The hearing lasted 43 minutes. I have sat through longer arguments about parking violations. I have sat through longer arguments about nothing at all, the kind of circular disagreements that fill time without moving anything forward, where both sides talk, mostly to hear themselves, and the conclusion was never really in doubt. 43 minutes by courtroom standards is not a long time. By the standards of what those 43 minutes contained, it was the longest morning of my life. Stanley Mosque Courthouse on West Temple Street in downtown Los Angeles is not a dramatic building. It is the kind of institutional architecture that says government rather than grandeur, functional, deliberate, built to last rather than to impress. I had driven past it dozens of times over the years without ever expecting to sit inside it for a reason that mattered to me. I arrived 20 minutes early, took the elevator to the correct floor, and found a seat in the back row of the assigned courtroom with a clear sight line to the front. Emily and Marcus were already at the respondents' table when I came in. Emily had her back to me, and I could not see her face, but I could see the set of her shoulders straight, composed the posture of someone who had decided how this was going to go, and had arranged their body accordingly. She was wearing a dark blazer. I recognized the one she'd bought for a job interview 3 years ago, and that she wore when she needed to feel like herself at full capacity. Jason sat at the petitioner's table with his attorney, a man whose name I never learned and whose suit cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Jason's right arm was still in a partial sling. He did not look at Emily. He looked at the table in front of him, with the expression of a man who has calculated that looking elsewhere is strategically preferable, which was probably accurate. The judge came in at 9 on the dot, a woman in her 60s, silver-haired with reading glasses on a chain around her neck, and the particular unhurried efficiency of someone who has managed courtrooms long enough to find impatience wasteful. She reviewed the case file for 90 seconds without speaking. Then she looked up and said, We're here on a petition for a permanent domestic violence restraining order and a challenge to the existing emergency protective order. Mr. Webb, you may proceed. Marcus stood. What happened in the next 30 minutes was the most methodical thing I have ever watched. Marcus Webb is not a dramatic man in courtrooms. He does not raise his voice or employ theatrical pauses or attempt to move anyone emotionally. He presents information in sequence, links it logically, and allows the weight of documented fact to do the work that lawyers who trust themselves less feel compelled to supplement with performance. He started with the video. Diane Okafor's 4 minutes and 17 seconds played on a screen visible to the judge, to both counsel tables, and to the gallery. The room was completely still while it ran. When it ended, Marcus said simply, "The petitioner's initial account to hospital staff stated that his wife attacked him without provocation. The court has now seen 4 minutes and 17 seconds of footage from a third-party witness who had no prior relationship with either party and no interest in the outcome of this proceeding. The footage is time-stamped, continuous, and unedited." He moved to the second exhibit. Jason's statement to the intake nurse at Huntington Hospital, read it into the record. Then the statement he had given to the responding officers, a different version with a different sequence of events. Marcus laid them side by side and said nothing for a moment, letting the contradiction sit in the air of the courtroom, the way a smell sits in a room. Then the audio from Darius Cole. Marcus had the transcript in hand and read the key passage aloud in a flat, deliberate voice, with Jason's words attributed clearly, "Just scare them enough to make them go away. I don't care how you do it." He noted the date of the call. He noted the dates of the subsequent incidents at the parking garage and at Richard Whitmore's residence. He noted that an individual identified through LAPD surveillance footage had been confirmed as the person present at both incidents and had entered into a cooperation agreement with the district attorney's office. Then the Queens County file. Marcus summarized it, without editorializing the prior name, the prior marriage, the prior order of protection, the incident that had prompted it, the similarities in pattern to the current case. He cited California Evidence Code, Section 1109, which permits evidence of prior acts of domestic violence to establish pattern of conduct, and noted that the court in Queens had found sufficient basis to grant the order of protection at the time. Jason's attorney objected twice. The judge overruled both objections with the specific economy of a person who has seen the same arguments before and found them unpersuasive both times. When Marcus finished, Jason's attorney stood and delivered an argument that lasted 6 minutes and rested primarily on the assertion that Emily Whitmore had been the initial aggressor, that his client had acted in fear, and that the footage which the attorney described as incomplete and subject to interpretation did not tell the full story. The judge listened. She made no visible expression throughout. When the attorney finished, she looked at Emily and said, "Ms. Whitmore, you indicated you wished to make a statement." Emily stood. "I had promised to be a statue. I kept that promise for approximately the first 30 seconds of what Emily said, and then something happened to my face that I did not have full control over, and I was grateful for the back row." She spoke without notes. She had told me the night before that she wasn't going to use notes because she didn't want to look at paper. She wanted to look at the judge, and that is what she did. Stood at the respondent's table and looked directly at the bench and spoke in the clear, carrying voice that she used when she meant every word and needed every word to land where it was aimed. She described the bank account, the $23,000, the morning she had taken the screenshots because something in her accountant's mind had recognized an irregularity before the rest of her had caught up to what it meant. She described the party, the wine glass going down, the decision to tell the truth in front of 30 people because she had run out of a different option. She described standing after and not crying and looking across the room for her father. Then she said, "I'm not here because I'm angry. Your Honor, I'm here because 47 people in this county trusted a man I married and lost money they spent decades saving. I want that on the record. I want my name associated with making sure it's on the record." The judge looked at Emily for a moment that lasted long enough to mean something. Then she picked up her pen and wrote something in the case file. The ruling came 4 minutes later. The emergency protective order filed by Jason Mercer was denied and vacated. A domestic violence restraining order under the California DVPA was granted in favor of Emily Whitmore, effective immediately, valid for 3 years. Jason's attorney leaned toward him and said something in a low voice. Jason stared at the table. His jaw was working the muscles in his cheek, moving the way muscles move when a person is processing something their mind keeps refusing to accept. Emily turned from the table and walked toward the gallery doors, and as she passed the last row, she found my eyes and held them for 2 seconds. She did not smile, she did not cry. Her chin was level, and her eyes were clear, and she looked like the woman I had spent 28 years trying to raise, like someone who had walked through something and come out the other side without losing the thing that made her herself. I stood up and followed her out. In the corridor, Marcus caught up to us and said in the same measured tone he used for everything, "The FBI called this morning. They've been monitoring Jason's accounts under a court-authorized surveillance order since the SEC referral. There was a cash transaction last night. Significant. They know what he's planning. Emily looked at him. What does that mean? Marcus looked at me. It means, I said, that it's not over yet, but it will be, very soon. I didn't tell Emily that night. I want to be clear about why, because it would be easy to read it as another instance of me managing information, of deciding what she could handle, and when the same calculation I had made in November when I sat across from Marcus in his locked conference room and chose to say nothing to a woman who was picking out wedding flowers. But this was different. This time, I didn't tell her because I didn't know yet. I knew something was coming. Marcus had told me the FBI had tracked a significant cash transaction, that they knew Jason's direction, that the timing was imminent. But imminent and done are two different things, and I had spent enough years in situations where imminent could still go sideways to know better than to tell someone it was over before it actually was. So I made dinner instead. Emily had come back to Pasadena with me after the courthouse she hadn't asked to, and I hadn't suggested it. It had simply happened the way things sometimes happen, between people who have been through something together and aren't quite ready to be separate yet. She sat at the kitchen counter while I cooked still in her dark blazer, her shoes off her feet tucked up on the rung of the bar stool, the way she'd sat since she was a teenager. She had her phone face down on the counter, and she wasn't looking at it. What do you want? I asked. Whatever you're making, she said. I made pasta. Something simple: garlic olive oil, cherry tomatoes from a can, a handful of basil from the pot on the windowsill that I'd been keeping alive through the winter, with more attention than it probably deserved. Emily set the table without being asked, which she had always done, and we sat across from each other in the kitchen under the overhead light, and we ate, and we talked about nothing that mattered. A documentary she'd been watching about deep-sea creatures, a crack in her apartment ceiling. She'd been meaning to report to the building manager whether the peach tree in the old backyard had still been there when the new owners moved in. It was the most normal hour I had spent in a month. Outside across the city, Jason Mercer, who had also been called Kyle Merritt in a New York courthouse in 2021, and who had apparently been preparing for the possibility of becoming someone else again, was at Los Angeles International Airport. He had withdrawn $80,000 in cash from 3 different bank branches over the previous 2 days' transactions that had each individually approached but not exceeded the $10,000 reporting threshold established by the Bank Secrecy Act. What he had not known, or had not adequately accounted for, was that the FBI's court-authorized surveillance of his financial accounts meant that every transaction was flagged in real time, and that the pattern of structured withdrawals, the deliberate spreading of cash across multiple transactions to avoid the automatic reporting trigger, a practice federal law calls structuring and treats as a crime, independent of whatever the money is, for had been visible to the agents monitoring the account as it happened. They had followed the money to a travel agency payment. They had found the ticket. One way. Cancun. Departing 9:45 p.m. from Terminal B Gate C-47. Booked under the name Kyle Merritt, with a passport in that name that Jason had apparently been maintaining since his New York years as a contingency he had hoped never to need. The FBI was at Gate C-47 before Jason was. I found all of this out later, some of it from Hayes, some of it from Marcus, some of it from the news coverage that ran the following morning, with security camera footage that I have never watched in full because I decided I didn't need to. What I know is this: Jason Mercer was taken into federal custody at Los Angeles International Airport at 9:31 in the evening, 14 minutes before his flight was scheduled to board, in front of a gate area that held approximately 60 people waiting for the same flight. He had 2 carry-on bags and a passport that wouldn't have gotten him where he was going even if he'd made it to the plane because the FBI had already coordinated with customs. He did not resist. That detail is in the report. He simply stopped walking when the agents identified themselves, and he looked at the boarding gate in front of him, at Gate C-47, which he would not be going through, and then he let them take the bags from his hands and put the restraints on his wrists. And that was the end of Jason Mercer moving through the world as a free man. At 9:14 p.m., my phone rang on the kitchen table. Emily and I had finished eating. She was rinsing plates at the sink, and I was drying them, and the phone screen lit up with Hayes' name, and I set down the dish towel and answered it. "It's done," Hayes said. "He's in federal custody, LAX, approximately 15 minutes ago." "Any complications?" I asked. "None," she said. "Clean arrest. He didn't run." "Thank you, detective," I said. "Get some sleep, Mr. Whitmore," Hayes said, and hung up. I stood with the phone in my hand for a moment. Emily had turned off the faucet. She was standing at the sink with her back to me, and I could tell from the set of her shoulders that she had heard enough of my side of the conversation to understand the shape of it, and she was giving me the space to find the right words, which was something she had always been better at than most people understood. I set the phone down on the table. "Emily," I said. She turned around. Her eyes found mine across the kitchen, and her face did something complicated, not surprise, not relief, exactly. Something that was the physical expression of a weight that has been carried so long, the body has forgotten what it feels like not to carry it, and then suddenly remembers. "It's done," I said. "He's in custody. He tried to run. The FBI was already there." Emily pressed both hands over her mouth. Her eyes filled not the careful, controlled filling of the past month, but the sudden total flooding of someone whose body has been waiting for permission and has finally received it. Her shoulders shook once hard, and then she crossed the kitchen in 4 steps and wrapped her arms around me the way she had when she was small and the world had been too large and I had been the available answer to that problem. I held my daughter in the kitchen of my house in Pasadena and felt her cry, really cry, the kind that shakes the whole body, the kind she hadn't let herself do in 30 days of holding everything together, and I kept my arms around her, and I did not tell her it was going to be okay, because she already knew that she had known it for weeks. She had just needed the last piece to fall into place before her body believed what her mind had already accepted. After a while, the shaking eased. She pulled back and pressed the heels of both hands against her eyes and took a long, uneven breath, and then another one. And then she looked at me with her face blotched and her eyes swollen and said, "You knew this afternoon, at the courthouse, when Marcus told us about the transaction." "I knew something was in motion," I said. "I didn't know how it would land. You didn't want to tell me until it was certain." "No," I said, "I didn't." She considered that for a moment, her breath still catching at the edges. Then she said, "That's fair." She wiped her face with the back of her wrist, the same gesture she'd used since childhood, quick and unself-conscious. "Okay." Another breath. "Okay." I picked the dish towel back up from the counter and finished drying the plate I'd set down when the phone rang. Emily leaned against the counter beside me and watched me do it, and after a moment, she picked up another plate from the drying rack and dried it too. And we finished the dishes together the way we had finished dishes 10,000 times before, in this kitchen and the one before it, in the ordinary, companionable way of two people who have known each other long enough that silence between them is never empty. When I finally went to bed that night, I lay in the dark for a long time before sleeping. I thought about Gate C-47. I thought about Dorothy Finch in Arcadia. I thought about a Saturday afternoon in 2008 in a backyard with a peach tree that never produced enough peaches and a 12-year-old girl who had told me I was doing it wrong. I thought she was right. She was right about that, and about most things since. Then I closed my eyes, and for the first time in 30 days, I slept without listening for anything. Emily signed the last piece of paper on a Wednesday morning in July. She used her maiden name in the signature line before it was legally hers. Again wrote it in the clean, deliberate hand of someone who has been practicing a signature in their head for months and finally has the page to put it on. The notary glanced at it, glanced at Emily, and said nothing. I think she understood. Some things don't require explanation. Some things are legible on their face to anyone paying attention. Emily Whitmore, not Mercer, not the name she had carried for 7 months and 19 days. Whitmore, her mother's name through me, given to her without ceremony on the day she was born and returned to her on a Wednesday in July in a notary's office on Lake Avenue in Pasadena, 2 miles from the house where she had grown up. She called me from the parking lot when it was done. I heard it in her voice before she said a word. A quality of space of room, the sound of someone standing in the open air after a long time in a confined one. "It's filed," she said. "I know," I said. "Come over, I'll make lunch." She came over. I made sandwiches, nothing special, turkey and Swiss on sourdough from the bakery on Marengo. A bag of chips I'd bought specifically because they were her favorite kind, and I'd been meaning to have them in the house for weeks. We ate at the kitchen table in the July heat with the back door open and the fan running and talked about her work, about a case she'd been assigned that was more complicated than she'd expected, about whether she wanted to take a trip somewhere before the end of the summer. She ate 2 sandwiches and most of the chips and said she hadn't realized how hungry she was. I thought she's going to be fine, not as something I needed to convince myself of, as a simple observation of the evidence in front of me. Around 3 in the afternoon, someone knocked at the front door. Diane Okafor was standing on the porch with a covered plate and a canvas tote bag over her arm. She was wearing a yellow blouse and her reading glasses pushed up on her head, and the expression of someone who had decided to come over and was not going to make a large event out of it. "I was baking," she said when I opened the door. "I had extra." "Come in," I said. She came in and set the covered plate on the kitchen counter, a coffee cake still warm with a crumble top that smelled like brown sugar and cinnamon, and looked at Emily, who had stood up from the table, and said, "I heard it was official." Emily crossed the kitchen and put her arms around Diane Okafor and held on, and Diane patted her back twice in the firm, efficient way of a woman who gives comfort, practically without theater, and said, all right, honey, you're all right." Emily pulled back and pressed her fingers under her eyes and said, "I'm sorry. I don't know why." "You don't need to know why," Diane said. She picked up the plate of coffee cake and looked at me. "Do you have a knife, or do I have to eat this with my hands?" I laughed, a real one, sudden, and unguarded, the kind that comes before you've decided to laugh. Emily made a sound that was half a sob and half something lighter, and Diane set the plate down and looked at both of us with the satisfied expression of someone who has correctly assessed a situation and applied the right remedy. We sat around the kitchen table, the three of us, a 60-year-old man who used to train people for situations he'd spent a decade trying to leave behind, a 28-year-old woman who had just gotten her name back, and a 58-year-old woman who had been standing in the right place at the right time, holding a phone, and had decided that mattering was worth the inconvenience. We ate coffee cake and drank the coffee I made, and talked about things that had nothing to do with courts or hearings, or men who built their worlds on other people's money and trust. Diane stayed for an hour and a half. When she left, she paused at the front door and looked at Emily and said, "You know where I am?" "I know where you are," Emily said. After she left, Emily helped me clear the plates, and then she stood in the kitchen doorway with her car keys in her hand and said, "I'm going to go home and sleep for approximately 12 hours. "Good," I said. She looked at me for a moment with the particular look she'd had since she was small, direct, clear-eyed, the look that meant she was about to say something she'd been holding for a while. "I know you knew," she said, "about Mercer Capital before the wedding." The air in the kitchen shifted slightly. "Yes," I said. "Marcus told me. He said you decided not to tell me until the evidence was solid." She turned her car keys over in her hand. "I've been thinking about that for a few months, whether I was angry about it. And," I said, she tilted her head slightly, "I understand why you did it. I don't know that I would have made the same call." A pause. "But I understand it." "That's all I needed," I said. She nodded. She crossed the kitchen and pressed a kiss to my cheek, the way she'd done since she was old enough to reach, and she said, "I love you, Dad. Go to bed at a reasonable hour." "I'll think about it," I said. She laughed and she left, and I stood at the window and watched her car pull away from the curb and turn onto the street and disappear, and I stood there for a while after it was gone. Jason Mercer was awaiting trial on 7 counts too, under California law, criminal threatening, and witness tampering, and 5 under federal statute, including 2 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of money laundering, and 1 count of obstruction of justice for the coordinated campaign against Emily and me. His attorney had filed the standard motions. The wheels of the federal system moved at the pace the federal system moves, which is not fast, but is thorough, and tends to arrive where it's going. I thought about Linda Mercer in Newport Beach, who was cooperating and was not sleeping. I thought about Dorothy Finch in Arcadia, who had wanted her name in the record and had gotten it there. I thought about Marcus, who had locked a door before opening a folder, and had never once told me the situation was manageable when it wasn't. I thought about Diane Okafor, who had been standing in the right place with a phone in her hand, and who had brought coffee cake on a Wednesday afternoon, because she was the kind of person who baked when she was thinking about someone and showed up when she thought showing up would help. I thought about Hayes, who had asked me what I used to do before Pasadena, and had said we'd discuss it after this was resolved. I was going to have to figure out what to tell her. I had not decided yet. I went to my desk in the small room off the hallway and opened the drawer and took out the photograph I had put there on the night Jason was arrested. Emily at 12 in the backyard, t-shirt and sneakers, standing with her feet shoulder-width apart and her chin level, waiting for whatever came next. I had given her what I knew how to give, not a perfect world, not protection from every hard thing, not the ability to avoid what hurt, I had given her the knowledge of how to fall without breaking, how to read a room before she walked into it, how to stay on her feet when something hit her without warning, and how to stand up afterward and keep going. And I had given her, without ever making a ceremony of it, the understanding that the people who love you best sometimes give you what you need years before you understand why you'll need it, that the gift and the explanation don't always arrive together, that sometimes you carry something a long time before you know what it's for. I put the photograph back in the drawer. Outside the sprinkler, 2 houses down, started up the same one I'd heard on the night I'd watched Jason Mercer on the television, the night I'd turned off the set, and started thinking about where this story actually began. The rhythmic sweep of it through the evening air of Pasadena, the smell of wet grass and eucalyptus coming through the open window, the neighborhood settling into itself, the way neighborhoods do at the end of a day. I closed the desk drawer. I went to the kitchen and washed the coffee cups from the afternoon. The 3 of them, mine, Emily's, Diane's, standing at the sink in the quiet of my house, doing the ordinary thing that needed doing. I didn't give her a perfect world. I gave her the tools to stand in an imperfect one. And when it came time to stand, she stood. That's all I ever needed to know. I've told you this family story exactly as I lived it, no cleaner, no uglier than it was. If there's one thing I want you to take from it, it's this. The most important things you give the people you love rarely look like gifts at the time. They look like early mornings in the backyard, like hard conversations nobody wanted to have, like patience when patience felt impossible. I believe God puts the right people in the right places at the right moments. Diane standing at that window, Marcus answering the phone at 10 at night, a 74-year-old woman who just wanted her name in the record. None of that was accident. This family story taught me that family betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it walks in, wearing a borrowed smile and a good suit, and cries at the altar. And sometimes the person who protects you from it has been preparing for that moment for 20 years. Without either of you knowing, that's what they were doing. My advice, if you'll take it from a 60-year-old man who got more right by accident than by design, pay attention to the people who show up quietly. They're usually the ones who matter. If this family story about love, family betrayal, and the quiet ways we protect each other reached something in you, leave a comment below and tell me what stayed with you. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, there's a button right below that takes 2 seconds and means you won't miss what comes next. Thank you for staying until the end. It means more than you know. Some details in upcoming stories have been fictionalized for storytelling and educational purposes. If this type of content isn't for you, we completely understand. Feel free to explore other content that better fits what you're looking for.